Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicki, and I'm joined with my co-host, Lou Caminelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions, built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Evening, Lou.
What's up, Matt? How are you?
Not bad. What do you got? What do you got for us today?
Uh, I mean, been you and I were talking. Had some guys at the firehouse doing some searching, throwing ladders. I know we've talked about it before, but we could just talk about general fire tactics. See where it goes. A lot of stuff on InstaFace. Poor ladder placement on some structures. Venting. With some stuff that I've seen people venting. And it's like, why are they venting it? A couple fires out this area, but they've had balloon frame construction and questionable tactics, I would guess.
Anything in particular that you want to break down and discuss?
I don't know. You want to talk about what some training scars that you encountered the other day?
Let's see. All right, so the other day we had a couple guys that needed to, not a refresher, but it's that time of year where we go through some of the stuff that we can do indoors and indoors only, just because we're in transitioning from that winter weather into the spring slop. It's still bitter cold out. It gets up to 40 for a couple days and it crashes back down to 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees. And because of that, we have to kind of confine ourselves to doing training indoors. So one of the things that we found were a few people were still coming off vacation and missed out on our regular scheduled training, which was search. So we kind of break that up into 2 days worth of training. One is in a maze, and that's more of just an overall SCBA confidence with confined space, obviously, not confined space rescue, but the confinement inside your encapsulation. The other is inside the apartment. So I believe we've mentioned it before on one of the episodes that we have a full apartment simulator downstairs in one of the stations, and it's decked out, living room, kitchen, you name it. Yeah, 2 bedrooms, one with a window that you can smash out and escape. Obviously, because it's in a basement, we can't do like a hang and drop to from like a second story window, but you can treat it as a first floor. Leading into that section of the building, so overall, going to the apartment simulator, there is a door that we have retrofitted with one of these kits for forcible entry. And it's in a position that it's midway down a hallway. So that hallway allows us to have, tactically, if you're thinking about forcing a door, it's going to be the doorway at the end of a hallway. So you have left and right sides, you have walls that kind of really impede your progress as far as forcing a door. So for the particular simulation, it was like you're approaching a house, you're going to force that door, and then you go right into the apartment simulator. It was supposed to be just a quick down and dirty evolution, just not so much a training aspect, like here's how to do something, now repeat it. It was more of a testable skill set using teams of 2. So 2 were going in and searching and figuring this layout out. And we're treating it as just a single floor or one division, depending on where you come from. You're going to search, find fire, find victims, and get out. And then you can keep, each evolution, you can keep adding on certain things, like that first door that you enter is not, let's say, an egress or even an entry point. So you might have to opt to another entry point or a window, and treat it as such. So you can really play this thing up as far as you want. The 2 individuals that we had, fairly newer, so over a year each. One's at 2-year mark, one's fresh off probation, I believe. And we were going through the search thing. So they came to that door and we set the door up. We use wood blocks on the backside or on one side of it, and you can kind of to mimic a lock. And all we used was 2 pieces pine, I believe it is. And that was it. And a couple wedges just to kind of lock it up real good. And listening to them I was on the back side of the door, the locked side of the door. They had to enter in, and I was just kind of watching them progress. It is a smoked environment and everything with the play smoke. And I was watching them. We're not even into the search yet, but they were fumbling, we'll say, with the basics of force entry because you added that little bit of pressure. And I believe we started talking about the psychology of a task when you're under pressure versus a task with no pressure. You might be able to repeat something over and over again, but when you're not repeating that progress under tension or under some sort of stress, you tend to forget it because you got the shunting of blood vessels and your mind's going crazy, all sorts of things. You add them all up. They were forgetting those basic steps of, gap set force, shock or sound the door, gap set force. And those are the basic principles of forcible entry, conventional forcible entry. And we were getting the bevel the wrong direction to the door, to the door versus the frame. It was an inward swinging door, so it's just the way that the prop was set. So even though we were treating it as an exterior, it's swinging in and away from them, and bevels to the wrong side, not using the ads appropriately. They're just kind of going straight to like this brute force mentality, as if like the first thing, I swear to God, the first thing that they were going to do was just try and kick this door. They did do the try before you pry, but they were struggling, and it took. Man, I looked at the clock and looked back, and I swear it said almost like 18 minutes before they were able to get through that door. And then they went on to their search. The search went fairly well. There was a little preparatory remarks beforehand, comments, so I think they were a little primed going into that situation on what to search for and how to maneuver through that single floor, one story we're treating it as, smoked out environment, and then getting out. Because that I just kind of marked down that we have an issue with going back to basics on, which I hate saying. They're not basics. They're not basics for a reason. It's just that they work 95% of the time. That's why you teach it at a basic level. But going back to those initial steps of the gap set force with basic force entry, just kind of really slipped on them, and that kind of sucked. It was a training scar because they were out of practice, if you will.
So what did you just question real? What did you use for the lock on the back? Like how many pieces of wood? Did you use PVC?
No PVC, just two pine blocks. They are, what do we cut those to? 12 or 14 inches, and they slide in.
Yeah, 12, 14 inches long, and they're about 1.5 by 1.5.
Yeah, about. They're about. And then each one, so there's essentially a top lock and a bottom lock, if you will. So they're really two. For those listening, it's just like the blue door. Most of them, everybody's pretty much seen these things. You slide two.
It's a
blocks on the backside.
Trox fire door.
Yeah,
the one that you can put on a existing door in your firehouse. It's what we have down there,
and that's what we used. Two wedges just to kind of lock it up. So one on each piece of pine, so it's just not jiggling loose on them. So it gives them something they have to really work to get that gap or that purchase point in the door. So that's what we were using.
So what do you think the corrective actions are for those two individuals?
Ultimately, it's practice. So it's not just practice on one of these doors, these force entry doors, but it's practice when you're going out into the public space. So whether that is actually forcing the door, say an EMS call, something where you don't need to be destructive or where you must be destructive to a door, or it's just a simple size up, looking at doors when you're cruising around. Let's say for us on the north side of the town that we work in, we have strip plaza that's there's a gym on one end, there's a couple of restaurants, but when you go around the back side, even though it's the same building, every door on the back side has a different lock on it. All exterior, outward swinging, so swings at you, doors, but they all have different lock sets on them. So identifying those groups, that's part one. Part two is getting those motions down, and it almost seems like it's a perishable skill, no different than knots. You learn to tie a knot in RTB Tech 1, all the way up into Tech 1. If you don't use it, you lose it. That seemed to be the case here.
Well, what's interesting about this situation with these two individuals is that you have an adult learner that's in his 40s.
Yes.
And then you have a Gen Z learner, which was 21, 22 now.
Yeah, I think he's 22.
Yeah. So you have a 20-year gap with these two individuals that you have to instruct, and you have to reach both of them.
Yes. Now, I was fortunate enough to be one of the instructors for both their academies, and going through those instances back when they started, they did fine. They were able to progress and move fluidly and build upon those things. And it's I'm not knocking on the crews they work with now, but somehow they've almost like undeveloped those skills. If that makes any sense.
It kind of. I've had talks with the one, and I've tried to assist him with some learning. I said, "Dude, carry like we've talked about this before.
Hmm.
Carry a notepad around. Like write things down." And I don't know. No, it is what it is. But it's funny because I kept saying I just said that, but the my senior man at the firehouse worked overtime over there, and that individual, the lieutenant asked him to run him through a drill the other day,
Okay.
and they just asked, "Hey, what do you want to work on?" It was, "Let's work on force entry," and then it was like they were told that he always picks force entry because he can use his brute strength and no technique. And from what it sounds like, what happened with you, the same thing happened with my senior man the other day. Is that brute strength didn't get through the door, and he didn't use technique, and they got to go back to learning. You said going back to learn the basics, but it's just going back to learning basic techniques of force entry.
Yeah.
Try shot gap, set force, clear control.
Right. Absolutely. Um, and I have noticed not just with this individual, him specifically, but there's a few other out there, including from other departments. They have this when they I don't want to call it panic because I don't want to enrage people thinking that it means that somebody's completely panicked. But you do have when you're under the gun, that alarm bell goes off. You jump on the rig, you go to a call. All of that excitement does hinder your ability to think clearly as if you're sitting at a desk with a pen and a paper. Right? It's not the same. And this individual, when he gets the slightest little bit of stress, he goes straight for brute force. Like you said, no tactics, and that gets in his way, and it ends up he spends more time, extreme amount of time, trying to get the task at hand done, and then he's spent.
Yeah, shot.
You all you did was open the door. You still got to go to work when you get inside that door.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like he skips over a flow. He's never been in a flow. I don't know if you know anything about like flow states or stuff like that,
Hmm.
but he's going like almost right to black when something doesn't go right for him. Yeah, and this is just a training simulator.
Yeah, there was no real solid pressure
There's no
other than let's
heat.
get through this drill and go.
Right. There's no heat. There's no smoke. I mean, there's fake smoke you had, but
He's not being graded. He's not, there's no risk of getting fired or reprimands or anything of that nature. This is just a training evolution. That's it. Repetition. So at the end of, we'll skip ahead. We'll Tarantino this a little bit. We'll skip ahead at the end of the two evolutions that we did while they were winding down. Okay, air packs off. Start unbuttoning, open up. There's a whiteboard now in that hallway, and obviously, big whiteboard fan. It looked like somebody had started doing the principles of forcible entry on the wall. So I just went straight in from that, and drew out the Halligan and started the Halligan by the numbers. Great article that's out there. I like that. I use that. That's in my notebook that sits in my pocket. All the time. I use that with every class. Anytime we go over forcible entry with other agencies or even just refreshers with our people, what does each number represent in relationship to the force you're applying to that bar? One of the common mistakes we find throughout all training scenarios, doesn't matter who it is people want to choke up on the Halligan. like really, really far. Their hand, their pressure hand, the most amount of force that they're putting might be like the center of the bar. Whereas you're always going to get the most amount of torque by placing it the furthest away from the door, if you will. Got to have that leverage. Now, the relationship to each piece, if you're applying the adds in and doing a sideways, it's 30 divided by 2, so you got a 15-to-1 versus, the forks in. You keep going down, all the way down to, like, say, a 5-to-1 mechanical advantage on that door. You're just not getting the torque. So where do you start and how do you progress through as the situation dictates, right? We said that this is the door at the end of the hall. Their benefit was the door was inward swinging, so away from them. And that meant you don't have to compete with the walls in any way. Where if it was outward swinging, coming at them, now you're competing with that wall, trying to get that bar. So now you don't get to maximize your efforts with all the pieces of Halligan. Not even that, those thought considerations were absent because they were skipping right past as we were watching. So there was no gap. There was no setting the irons. It was just trying to go right to the forks, trying to set those in and apply force. And because those locks weren't loosened up, what we say, quote unquote, locks, because they didn't gap, you weren't getting any advantage on that door.
Let me ask you, when they set, were you watching them at all force the door, or you were on the lock side?
I was on the lock side. There was another instructor on the other side.
So I'm curious to where they were placing those forks on that door, because if you said you use 2 pieces of wood, and a lot of people, they want to go straight for the middle on that prop.
Yes.
And when you go straight in the middle between the 2 pieces of wood, or if you're talking about 2 locks, you're putting 50% of your force on one lock and 50% of your force on the other lock. Where, in my experience, and it's just like with attacking the hinges on a door for extrication, you don't put your spreaders right in the middle of both hinges, because then you're just trying to go at both hinges. The prop, you have to stay in the yellow strike plate. But if you just slide the bar up as far as it can go, you're putting the majority on the force on the top lock. And then once you pop that one, you slide it down and you put the majority of the force on the bottom lock and pop that one. Because then you're maximizing the force on one lock at a time, instead of trying to fight 2 locks at the same time.
So they did, when they got to the 10-minute mark, they did identify that they were right vertically between the 2 lock sets. So one of them called out, hey, let's go down, attack one, and then attack the other. And that started to work it. But at this point, they were still trying to drive the forks in and still didn't go through those process of the gapping and setting the forks appropriately. So they were just driving them in there, and it was getting no bite. And on these particular doors, if you go right at the lock, so that was the next step. When you go right at the lock, you get hung up on the mechanisms that make this lock. So it's like a U bracket that's welded on the back sides of it, and that holds the bar in place. So there was nothing to really get the forks around and bite to. So they were kind of like, euchering themselves on top of that.
Well, and that's it, just based off the door. If they're putting the forks in the actual spot that they're supposed to put it into, and they stay perpendicular to the door, it shouldn't hit the bracket that holds the wood or the PVC or whatever you're using. That means it's telling me that they were going in on an angle, because if the fork went in straight like it's supposed to, it wouldn't have hit it, because that area that you're supposed to force is not near the brackets that hold the wood or the PVC. So I can just tell, just with everything you're saying, the techniques are off, and it just needs to have practice, and
it is what it is. So they eventually got there. I mean, I wouldn't say that this was the best outcome. I mean, eventually they got it open, but what if that's the one door, you get a hallway and you got another door, I mean, like, you have to be prepared for those moments. Like I said, it is what it is, but by the time we refreshed at the end and, did kind of like a hot wash, the whole thing, and then go back through the process, things started to click. We ran out of time to go back through another cycle and and put it to practice now. So we'll have to come back to that revisit. But that was the start of this search evolution that drew out another, like it identified another problem that was not the initial task. The initial task was search this floor and do what you got to do, and see how it goes. Right off the bat, approaching that door and getting that door open, problem. So write it down. We'll attack that at another time, but not very efficient. And just using them as an example too. I want to be clear. We're not making fun or anything like that. There's plenty of people out there that struggle or need to knock the rust off because of winter, whatever it is, whatever the excuse is. We just got to get better at training, and we forget that when we don't use this stuff, it goes to the wayside. Got to be prepared.
Our fire departments had 2 decent fires last month. One was a second alarm, and one was close to being a second alarm. And some I can't even call them training scars because I don't know what came from them. I don't know if you can speak to it, but ladders being thrown upside down or fly in.
Certainly.
The one thing I wanted to defend the ladder being thrown upside down because that truck company, those ladders used to be dual hook ladders where the feet were on the both top and the bottom. I know that the captain of the truck company got rid of the dual hooks for his reasons. I wish they would just send them over to our rig. We would have took them all, and they would have gave them the single hooks. And then there was a ladder, the whole fly in versus fly out. Look at the manufacturer says flies out, fly goes out. There's a litany of reasons of why the fly goes out. The paws or the dog's lock. If you were to step on the dog and the fly is in, you could potentially unlock the dog. The way some of the feet on the ladder dig into the ground, if it's flipped the wrong way, they don't dig in properly. But what's your experience with what happened that?
Well, so out of that forced entry and search thing, this topic started to get broached. They were asking, they led to a series of questions that came up on the next evolution, my next shift, which was with one of those same individuals. And they said, well, how does the Fireground tactics really flow and what's the process? And we always use the old nomenclature or the old adage, it's the RECEO VS. Ours rescue, right? We expect to rescue first. And it's a very, very broad statement. The more you do this, the more you train, the more you teach, the more you go out there and experience things, you start to see that everything starts to actually fall in the steps of RECEO VS, but it doesn't mean it's the be all end all guideline of first do this, then do this, then do this every single time, and extinguishment is not, it's the second E. So it's the fourth letter of RECEO VS.
All right.
You would think it would be at the top, but really it's known life that we got to go save. So we prepare for that. Okay, no known life. Then we prepare for our known life hazards, right? And continue going on. So the first 4 are rescue, then exposures. That's kind of, I think, a given, but where we work, houses are close together. Some places your houses might be a mile away, so you really don't have much of an exposure problem other than small exposures, cars, sheds, things of that nature. Confinement.
Well, exposure could also be the hallway. If you have a room and contents fire, the exposure could be the hallway.
Exactly. And that's the next one is C, which is for confinement, right? C is confinement, and that's the best case scenario. You're already behind the ball when a fire started, so if you can confine that and extinguish it, you're doing a great job, right? You're keeping it from progressing. So whether that's confined to a bathroom or a single room or one section of the house or a building, a larger scale building, a commercial or even an apartment building, confining it to one location and not letting it spread is awesome. But regardless, you have to start to consider a crew is going in and doing that task. Often it's a truck or a search crew, depending on how the response guidelines are laid out. But you have people in there working, and if something does fail, they need to bail out, and their main motive or the main entranceway is gone. They might be going to a window, the nearest window, and bailing out. So that's why we put an emphasis, at least at our job and most places around the country. Hey, we got to get some ladders up, at least to one side. If we can get all sides, even better. But we got to start somewhere. So what you're alluding to is a fire. I don't want to get too far into the details because I can only speak on my portion of it, and I don't know if it's totally okay to talk about the whole thing yet. But the after action is out. We did have a fire that an outside truck company, specifically, it was the OV guy, and a series of other people were assisting. They threw a bunch of ladders to the building, and that's awesome. We need that. It was a raised ranch, so those windows are really, really low. The truck that they pulled the ladders off of, the shortest one is, the shortest extension ladder that was pulled is a 28. So when you pull a 28 going to a first floor, we'll call it, window of a raised ranch, that height is not a great height. So in order for that, when they just threw that ladder up and placed it at the base of the window, the sill of the window, or just below, your angle was extreme. And I want to say it was around the 50-degree mark, 50-degree inclination. So if you can imagine, I mean, optimum is 70, 75 in that range. We're significantly low on the building, and it's extended way out. The base is extended way out from the wall of the home itself. Where the feet, or the butt, we'll say, the bottom portion of the ladder, the butt landed, was in a driveway just lightly concealed by snow at the neighboring house. So when a crew went to climb up there to vent, there was no need to egress out a window or anything like that, thank God. However, when a crew went to go climb up that ladder, even though one person was footing it, it was at such an extreme angle that the footman, it slipped and kicked out straight at him, and the person at the top rode straight down to the ground. He's all right, thank God, but somebody got injured that day. Now, looking back at it, it's not the first time I've seen this happen, but the ladder was placed what we call backwards. The foot was still on the ground, tip was at the top, but shitty angle, and the fly was in. And because it was not extended, the fly was touching the ground. So because that fly was in, the base of the fly was touching the ground, and it was keeping the feet of the ladder, the actual feet, from biting into the ground itself. So slippery conditions aside, the feet still would have slid out. However, the feet weren't really even engaged with the ground. It was the bottom rolled edge of the ladder, if you will, of the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So came down to this. Well, can you, and this has come up before, can you throw a ladder backwards, fly in, and leave it? And it's got to be a dire circumstance where somebody's bailing out extremely, extremely fast. When it's extended, maybe not all the way, but to, let's say, 2 clicks, 2 rungs up, it can support somebody making emergency egress. However, it's not truly designed from the manufacturer to be that way for our specific brand. And they even put that logo. If you look on the side of the beam, they put that logo with the little fireman, and there's an arrow that says this way out. And that's means fly facing out. So it leads to our ladder training development and how we progress through that. And we've always stated, when you raise that ladder, you can raise it if you're, let's say you're not butting into the building, you're raising it in the open, so away from the building, straight up. You extend the ladder. Yeah, you can lean that ladder into the building with the fly in, but then you have to roll it into position at the last minute. Now, when we do that, that's a very specific tactic. Doesn't have to always be that way. It's just easier to remember, because if you do it single person, 2 person, 3 person, whatever, and you follow those steps every single time, just like the forced entry equation that we had earlier, you do it once, you can remember it for all scenarios. So lift it backwards, and the last thing that you should do is roll it into place right at the base of the window. That also gives you the availability to adjust and not have that thing setting. So why is that important? Well, let's say you have Mrs. Smith hanging from that window, or she's at that window screaming, I got to get out, I got to get out. If you raise it up, straight up, with the fly out, and then you lean it into the building, if you are not dead set, on your elevation of the ladder. When you lean that in, if you've got to make adjustments, you can't pull back. So even if it's too tall or too short, she sees a ladder coming at her, she's going to go out onto that ladder. She's going to reach for it and grab it. You're stuck. So by doing it to the side backwards, it does allow you to, say, feather your adjustments and then roll it back in. But regardless, the final placement should be fly out, windowsill, tip at the windowsill, at least for the initial response. Other things dictating would be venting. We vent from the side of a window or above. We don't vent from underneath, typically.
Who doesn't?
That's what I'm told on.
No.
That's what I'm told.
Ladder, and I will die on this hill. Ladders go up to one spot on a window, and that's at or below the windowsill. We don't put the ladders above. We don't put the ladders to the side. I don't care what the ifs the book says. I don't care what whoever, a 4-letter code might say something else. The ladders go at or below the windowsill. You have your full PPE on. You take windows, you vent, and the ladder stays there.
I agree. I don't want to keep moving stuff around. Just from my recent experience, being told that if we're going to vent a window, we need to pull it back, raise it up. You go from the attack it from the side,
absolutely,
or above. I think it's too much adjustment. We got to get in, get our task done, get out. It's no different. Think about venting a roof. You get up there, you cut the roof, you get the hell off the roof. You don't hang out up there all day. So same principle.
Why? But what is the reason we're taking windows?
So the correct answer would be is you're in communication with that crew inside, and they're looking to turn the AC on for the guys. You're trying horizontal to ventilation.
You want to be on the exhaust end of that fire stream, right?
Yes. Yep.
So the other thing is maybe we're taking windows to conduct a search, and I'm not going to get into the VES search debate whether you go past the door. This is just I'm accessing the second floor via ladders.
Right.
So I'm going to put that ladder. So if I have to vent the window, so this particular person is trying to tell me that because I'm venting the window, I got to put the ladder up to the leeward side of the window, start high, work my way low. And then because I want to go search, now I got to come down the ladder, put the ladder at or below the windowsill, now clear the window because I can't really efficiently clear the window from the side. Then I got to clear the window, and then I'm going to go in. That makes no sense.
It makes no sense to me either.
We have full PPE.
I think this is a safety thing, some sort of safety argument, and it's not the way I was taught either. I base of the window or sill of the window, get up there, smash that glass, clear that window, get in, get out. And that's if you're venting specifically a window. If you're just placing it there for egress for somebody else, and then you radio once you're done placing ladders, you just got to radio it or tell somebody, hey, you got ladders on this side or all sides are laddered, something. Just so tactically everybody knows. Or at least the command.
Yeah, I get it. I know where this is coming from, but if we needed to vent a second floor window and I have someone, just think if you didn't have a ladder.
Use the aerial tip.
You're on the Charlie side. You're on the Charlie side. And you didn't have a ladder with you, but you had a 10-foot hook or maybe a 12-foot pike pole. Were you standing to vent that window?
Pretty much
you're underneath it.
That's the maximum reach right there.
You're underneath under it. So the time I don't have a ladder, I'm probably in the worst spot there is, but I still got to take that window. The time I do have a ladder, I'm at level with the window, and I bust that window out. Where's it going? It's not going to blow back at me. I've never once took a window from a ladder where the ladder is at or below the windowsill, and my head is probably level with the lower sash, the lower pane. I can't remember glass ever coming back at me. The pressure in that house would have to be so great that when you took that window, that it blew everything.
Would you be taking it at that point?
Probably not.
Maybe not. Why not just bounce the ladder and hope for the best?
Right.
You
That's
know, there's
another
that
thing.
if it's that point of failure. I've heard remarks such as, well, a piece of glass could fall out, hit the beams, and ride the beams and slice you. I've
That's why
I've
you have
heard
your
it all.
gloves on. That's why, yeah. And
I've heard it all.
I still haven't seen any case studies that I've heard the rumors, I've heard the stories, but that's all they are now. Is they're just stories because I've never seen a documented case where a guy vented the window with a ladder and this shard of glass that came down like a freaking knife decapitated his hand.
Yeah,
Think about how fast that would have to go, and you're not wearing your PPE
that's a whole nother issue.
for something like that to happen. It it just baffles me. It just seems like these stories get made up to scare people for not doing tactics that are proven because maybe these people are scared to do. I don't know, scared to do them.
So that particular ladder for that operation, people were removed, treated. It got placed right back up to the same starting spot.
Never rectified.
It was not rectified. The picture that was in the after action, I believe, was at that point. So I can't be for sure certain that it was placed incorrectly the first time. I'm being told that, but I was not there to witness it. So I'm going to stick with what I truly know, and that was at the end. So there's that. Can we place ladders backwards? Is that acceptable?
I've always said no.
I,
Place the ladders the way they're supposed to be placed.
if you make those simple adjustments to your training all the time, so it's like for me personally, I do the roll. I roll it in last place, so it's already at the angle. I roll it right into place because I got a pretty good eye at where I'm going to go, how high I need. I lean into the building, then I roll it into place. Now it's fly out, and then lastly, I tie off the halyard if it's that high where that needs to be tied off. That's my practice because no matter how I'm going to throw that ladder or at least butt it to the building versus having it 5 foot up away from the building and just standing it straight up, so out in the open, I'm always going to if I make a mistake, it's going to repeat itself. But if I make no mistake, it's going to repeat itself. At no mistake, it's always going to land that same exact way. So that's my little mechanical roadblock, if you will, so that I come out with that same end means.
Is
It's
basic normalization of deviance.
yes, it is.
And maybe this whoever threw that ladder, and maybe this happens in other departments. They throw a ladder and they're in a rush or whatever the case may be. The ladder gets thrown, the fly is in. It's not out like it's supposed to be, and nothing happens. And they do it again, and they might actually use that ladder, and nothing happens. And then they keep doing it over and over again. And then you get to the point where you have icy conditions on a driveway surface, and someone goes to climb that ladder, and the dogs aren't the paws are not biting in because it's an icy surface, and the fly is in. So the rolled end of the fly is actually the part that's making contact with the ground. And he goes up the ladder, and physics always win because physics are
Mm-hmm.
physics, and that ladder comes down, and now you have someone to get hurt.
So the next step of this, even if you were to extend it or whatever, by having that fly in at the final position, you now have the halyard on the fly
As a
out.
tripping
So
as a tripping
yeah,
hazard.
tripping hazard going up and somebody coming out, bailing the hell out. Yeah, sure. Even if it's in the normal position, they might, if they do the hook and spin, you might hook that halyard a little bit, but it's on the backside. It's away from the body position. Now you have it directly right in front of them. So not only are they bailing out of this thing, they're going straight into an entanglement on their way down. That's at least the way that I kind of look at it. Just keep everything nice, neat, and packaged up. Flip it to the backside. It should be underneath the ladder on the inside. The halyard should be on the inside.
Right.
That way the fly's out. Now you also don't have a bump that you're going to run into like a doorstop on your way down as well, which would be the bed of the ladder.
Right, and what if that ladder needed to be used like you just said? You have a speed bump in the way now, and you had to actually rescue an unconscious person, and you're coming down the ladder, and they might have some clothes on, whatever. I know my bunker gear gets caught on a ladder, doing bailouts and stuff like that. So you're bringing a patient down, you're bringing a victim down the ladder, and you had that fly in. So now the bed section's sticking up, like you said, a speed bump,
Hmm.
and you're trying to bring an unconscious patient down that ladder. And if they're clothed, even if they're not clothed, they're going to get hung up. Now you're
Right.
just
Yeah.
fly in, fly out, make it.
Gets you worked up.
Yeah.
It gets me worked up. The other ladder. So the other ladder was a straight ladder, specifically a roof ladder with the hooks at one end, and that was placed hooks down. So on this particular model, the hooked end or the tip also has those rolled edges on the tip. There are no feet on that end because the
So
feet are on the butt, and that's the only thing. And it was placed feet up in the air against the building.
so when those ladders were purchased, they were purchased with both ends could be used as the tip and both ends could be used as the butt.
Do you mean both ends had feet on them?
Both ends had feet,
Okay.
and both ends had roof hooks,
Okay.
just like the one we have on our rigs aerial.
Yes.
Both of those
I do
16.
remember seeing them, but that was not
And
the option that was
then
pulled.
something happened. No, then something happened, and all of a sudden now there's just single hook roof ladders.
Hmm.
And I thought they just removed the hooks. I didn't realize they removed the feet as well and replaced them with a tip.
Yeah, it was just sitting on the tip. I have to double check that now, but yeah, from what I saw in the picture, it was just upside down. There's a regular roof ladder, straight ladder roof, and it was hooks down. If it is
To
one of
me,
the ones that have feet at both ends, that's really a non-issue. The issue here isn't that the ladder itself is upside down because that one's rated either direction. It's just
right.
those hooks. It's not about the hooks themselves, but it's what's biting into the ground.
Well, even if you in that, and I saw that picture, and I said, this is the perfect scenario where because of what the OVs are doing, you could have deployed the hooks and hooked the window and not worried about
Yeah,
because the angle was still a terrible angle. You could have hooked the window, and that ladder would have been completely safe.
could have. Yes, so long as that's provided that the window's broken out
Right.
as well.
Yeah, you clear the
You know,
window out.
clear the window out.
Trim it out. Which you can't trim a window out from the side.
So that was what came out of that one. Is we had
Probably
some
you can. It's just easier to do it
we had some
from either the
backwards and
inside or
upside
the.
down ladders. I don't know. That particular truck has that truck company has longer ladders overall. There aren't really any short extensions or smaller extensions or smaller straight ladders. They're large. You don't have a 24 extension. You have a 14 or 16 roof. It's everything larger than that. 28s, 35s for the extension ladders. So going to single story occupancy or even a raised ranch that's essentially single story, the basement, if you will, is living space. You're not making it to any of those windows. What came out of that policy was, okay, if we go to one of these style things, strip another rig, strip an engine with their ladders. I'm like, I think the best thing would be just drop one of the long ladders and have a little bit of a complement of everything. You are the truck company, it's kind of your job as ladders. You got a giant one on the back of this thing. And you're saying you're showing up and you don't have the tools to do ladders. Like, I'm not sure if I should be bothered by that or not.
I mean, I don't know if raised ranches are a thing where a regional type of house for us. Do they have raised ranches out west of here?
Some neighborhoods do. Yeah, it's not as common, but yeah, they are around.
So if you think most raised ranches are living room on one side, followed by a dining room area right behind the living room with usually an open floor plan, almost like a small galley kitchen right up at the top of the steps. and then it's either 2 or 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms and a bathroom down the hallway, right?
Hmm.
And then downstairs you have your garage, maybe another bedroom and another bathroom. So this goes to, efficiency laddering, and usually at the back of the house there's some sort of uh, some of them have decks. A lot of them have decks. This one definitely had a deck because that's where the fire was.
Hmm.
Um, but this goes to efficiency of laddering. And what are we laddering at a raised ranch?
I mean, on that particular one, because it is a what we call a walkout, so the grade slopes to the backyard. So on the backside,
Yeah, at a
the
walkout basement.
yeah, the half floor that's half sunken is fully exposed on the backside. So the backside, if that deck wasn't there, that would be a good place to place a ladder because you treat it as a 2-story on the Charlie side of the building. You could, but we had a deck in the way that was on fire.
Right.
It was an
It,
outside in fire. That's where it mostly started and then started moving its way into the rest of the structure. From the front and the sides, you don't have that. You have the slight grade, but there really weren't that many windows. You had the garage on the Delta side, so you're laddering what? The garage roof. And I can't recall if there's a window peeking out between the garage roof peak and the peak of the house structure itself.
Above the garages, usually on raised ranches, are the
Like a
bedrooms.
vent or something. Yeah, but also like your cross
Yeah.
vent might be right up in that space, so you might not
Yeah.
have a window just below it.
Right.
Yeah.
Those two ladders, were there wasn't a house in the after action report we got. They didn't have a floor map of the house.
Oh,
What were those two ladders to? Were they the two separate rooms? Do you know?
that I do not know.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
this
know.
just goes, laddering for efficiency and stuff like that. Yeah, and the other thing is,
I see where you're going with it though. Why
yeah,
ladder? It's like the same thing if you got a room that one like a corner room and it's got two windows,
right,
one wall, one on the other, and you ladder both windows. You're laddering one room. You're wasting two ladders
exactly,
to one
yeah.
room.
So the next fire, I'll talk about it. At our after action report. We talked about getting is the aerial necessary on residential structures,
Right out the gate.
and so we talked about this at our firehouse, and I said the only time that aerial should be coming out of bed is after your ladders are thrown. Granted, we have some large 2.5 story houses where the aerial ladder is probably the safest and quickest way to get to the roof, and it might be you might be able to get the third floor attic space if it's livable space with the aerial. But our main thing on residential structures is get the ground ladders up, and on ranches, 1.5, which are Cape Cods, even our 2-story colonials, we pride ourselves on getting ground ladders up to the roof. And most of the colonials are walkable pitches, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Capes and the Dutch colonials, which are the 2.5s, which the pitches aren't walkable. But if you train on ground ladders enough, you should be able to get a ground ladder to the roof with a roof ladder deployed and get up and cut your hole just as fast as you would be able to get, an aerial in place. It just so happens that the next fire they had was a ripping. It started as room contents fire. By the time the first engine company got there, it sounded like it got pretty good into the attic, and the engine boss was expressing that he needed vertical ventilation as soon as possible. So as my senior man was working overtime today, he came, he was like, boss, I used the aerial. I was like, whatever, man, I don't care. He's like, it was the quickest way where we were. It was just, I just swung the aerial out, positioned it right next to the peak. We crawled out, ripped a hole, got off the roof, and finished it off. And I said, yeah, if the boss is screaming for vertical ventilation, and you think that the aerial is the quickest way, it might be that at this point it was the safest way to get up there because the roof was pretty degraded at the time. use the aerial. But 90% of the time, we should just be worrying about the ground ladders at residential structure fires.
Yeah.
That and the other thing that happens is based off your jack system, and you're on a residential street, you've just clogged the entire area with your jack spread.
Yeah, if you don't short jack.
Right, the tower has an 18-foot jack spread.
It's massive.
Ours is
And
just over 17 feet.
but I think yeah, and it's
Ours
tough with
is,
the placement of that thing too. That tower is a mid mount, so it always everybody's slightly nosing out and
but
away
don't
into the
have,
street
but you don't have to on a residential. There's no point of doing that on a residential.
typically. Yeah.
That that nosing out and canting the nose out so you clear the cab with your scrub is for commercial structure fires like storefront attacks. So you have the whole 180 degrees
Mm-hmm.
of scrub if you had to do a storefront attack. Your normal residential structure is maybe 60 feet wide, 80 feet in the big in our district. 80 feet would be pretty big. Pull past a little bit more. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
I
60 feet's probably normal. A normal width for a 60 by 40 is probably pretty normal for what we're looking at.
yeah,
And that's
that
on the
seems about
and I
right.
would say that's on the larger side.
When and if I drive, I usually get it the the aerial placement. So the vehicle itself, the apparatus placement, is so that the jacks can try to hit that driveway, and we just short jack it on the working side. Yep. Excuse me, like however you want to word that. The street side, we don't extend the jack, so we short jack it. So we only are working off the working side. But I don't go into throwing the jacks on and getting them out. I do that very, very last. First thing is getting those ladders out and placed. Then, ancillary stuff. Usually the boss I normally work with, I know the next thing he's going to be calling for right away is usually a hook and an attic ladder as they're doing a little bit of overhaul or looking for extension. So I get those placed at the door. You find this process. If something changes thereafter where they got to start going to the roof, okay, I'm already placed in a spot where all I got to do is kick out the one jack and raise the aerial. That's it. All right,
So
you're kind of just primed.
if I saw that tower, if I was an incident commander, which I'm not, and I saw the tower ladder go up on a ranch, I would probably lose it. You know what I mean?
Training.
But for what?
Look, unless there's some extenuating circumstance that somebody parked right at the rear of that apparatus and you can't get ladders out, I think it's up to that operator to know their conditions right out the gate. Really
So
take a good look. Are there wires? That's going to give
here's
you
what
a
I'm
whole
getting
set.
at.
And two is place yourself in a place where you can get ready that if you need it, you can go to it. But don't use it. Don't get off the truck and expect to start putting up an aerial right away.
Here's what I'm getting at is, and I understand, putting the jacks in the driveway because we do that too. But if let's say you're approaching the house and the driveway is on the side you're approaching, so that means
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the house is forward of the rig, and you don't cant your rig out. Does the cab impede you from getting to that roof?
Depends on the height
Normal height of a ranch,
and how close you
16 feet. Setback is 60 feet.
are. Might be able to reach it. I would think. Maybe
Would the cab impede you?
it is pretty close. It's kind of high. It's pretty close to the corner of the cab is really close to that turntable. So I think you might. I mean, you can go up and over the cab, but you're not going to be able to come down all the way
Come
on
down,
the roof.
right? And that's why I mean we're talking about a ranch. And when do you need to open up the roof on the ranch? When it's in the attic.
If it's all the way up there, right?
If it's in the attic. And by that
I mean,
time,
most of those you're still going to probably drop unless you're cutting a specific vent hole, like a 4x4 type hole, just to vent one confined area. But if you're running like, let's say, Cape Cod or something, where you have knee walls and the dormer space, or not dormer space, the line above that that occupied
Yeah, a little cock loft
space.
area.
Yeah, you got to run a
What?
whole strip almost, so that you capture the vent, the cross vent section, the room, and that knee wall. You're still throwing a straight ladder up there, anyways, a roof
Right, it's
ladder.
more efficient
Right,
than trying to cut that whole thing with the bucket.
right. There's no way you're going to be able to do that. We're going to have one guy out there riding it like Jack Sparrow, and the other guys maneuvering it.
Right.
You know, I suppose you could, but that doesn't seem. That
Yeah.
seems now we're just getting into the weeds on craziness. If you knew your operation, did it well, you get those ladders up to the windows, maybe you under the roof line. You're prepped for the next step if it gets called for. Same thing with the jacks. Get them in a place where if you have to use them and kick them out, okay, it'll support it. And
Yeah, just having a 95-foot tower even being thought about on a ranch or even a Cape Cod, it's still like, I'm like, what are we doing? That thing should be in the bed.
And that's why that old what do you call it? It's not adage, but the acronym, the old acronym RECEO VS comes out. There's a reason that's a very broad, but it is a guide. First thing that we're trying to prepare for is rescue. If you're going for that aerial on a ranch, let's say, you're not
delaying
going
rescue.
anywhere for rescue. That's not rescue. What are you rescuing?
Right.
You're getting ready for ventilation, which is way down the line.
Or on a ranch with a tower putting up, you're getting ready for defensive tactics.
Or, you're putting the give up sticks up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're wasting time putting that thing in position. Even putting the jacks in,
Yeah. Jacks take a lot to load out. Get fully in place, the pads, getting everything. It takes quite a bit of time. I would rather be jamming ladders to the windows.
Yeah. On a ranch, there's really no windows.
Not on a ranch. Great. I'll get the little 3-foot steps to allow.
But a couple good fires with the guys, the boys have had. They had good stops on. Good stop on the one you had. Excellent stop on the one they had the other day. But seen a couple things on the internet, a couple videos. One particular one was a garage fire, and this goes back to your RECEO VS again, and it's garage fire, so really not concerned about maybe a rescue, but you're going into your exposures, and it didn't even look like a 360 got done, and it looked like they got tunnel vision on the alpha side of the structure because that's where they pulled up to. And if they would have done a 360, they would have. In the video, you could see fire blowing out of the Charlie side. And the decision was made by the guy in the nozzle to direct the stream into a little burn hole in the door, into the roll-up door. And the truck company made a decision to vent the roof instead of taking the doors. And then it just progressively got worse.
Was there any explanation?
No, and this is a good department too. It's a 4-letter West Coast department.
Okay.
Very aggressive truck companies. It just seems like, and I'm just trying to learn from this fire. I wish, I posted the fire. We posted on our Instagram, hoping one of the guys that was there would reach out and say, hey, this is what was going on. I would love to know, instead of just me watching a couple seconds of a video. But the truck company went up there. They threw a ladder to a spot that I would have never thrown a ladder to. And then the ladder got taken away while guys are up on the roof.
Sorry, bud, we need this.
Yeah, and then the guys, I don't know if it was the boss or one of the firemen, after they cut the hole, they're yelling down, hey, we need a ladder back up here. We need to get down off this roof. And while this is going on, the area that it's a 2-door garage. I wouldn't even call it a 2-car garage, but there's definitely 2 doors. Maybe you could fit like 2 little Priuses in there. but one section burns away enough where the nozzleman can get in there a little bit deeper. But they've never removed the garage doors on this fire.
Hmm.
And then you kind of can see, but you don't really see a line going interior. I'm sure there was, and if there, I hope there was a line that went interior to check that man door. But the whole time you can see fire blowing on the Charlie side. It's just it was one of these videos. It's like, what are they doing? It's they might have just had an off day. Who everybody's got an off day. I've had off days, but
So pulling up to something like that, let's say it's the engine. Who was? Did it say who was there first? Engine or a truck?
it
I'm
did
sure they
not.
were right behind each other, but that first line that's coming off, if you got it blowing out the Charlie side, where are you bringing that line? You know it's from a garage. Do you bring it interior and get to that man door that's going into the kitchen? And let's, in this particular situation, let's say that the garage door, the actual roll up door, is down. Do you bring it in through the kitchen or in through the house itself and go to from the interior out into the garage, or do you go around back, or do you go straight and attack that garage door? What's your first attempt here?
I think in this case, you got to get a 360. And me and the other truck boss that works on my group, we've tried to instill in the engine bosses that it is better for the. I'm watching the video right now. There are guys that went inside. I don't know
Okay,
what they
that's good.
did, but there is no line inside. It looked like one boss went inside and then he came out. But we try to tell our bosses on our group, the engine bosses, that it is up to them to get the 360 done because the truck company wants to get in and confine the fire with a can or confine the fire with doors, effect rescues. We are the rescue exposure, maybe the interior exposures. When I say interior exposures, we want to keep the fire confined to the room and contents. So we want to knock back it out of the hallway by closing doors and and the other
Hmm.
stuff. So truck company, even though it's engine company work, the exposures and confinement, the truck company, if they get in there quick enough, can assist in all that. With the engine company boss doing the 360, they're the ones that can call out the hose, what line needs to be pulled, where they want to pull it, and where they want to extinguish a fire. So if this initial, if it looks like an engine and truck were first on scene and still no line through the front door, they're pulling they have a engine, looks like a nozzle that went through the garage where it's burned up. They like kind of kicked it in, and now the second door is on fire, and now a dry line is being stretched to the Charlie side where most of the fire was showing on initially. My point is, if the engine company went and did a 360 and saw the bulk of the fire on the Charlie side, they might have found a walkout porch or some sort of attached room, something to the garage. Who knows what people do with their garages? A lot of things done. I've seen
But
enough.
something's open at that point.
Something's open. Yeah, I've seen roll up doors in the back of garages. It's an awesome concept. I wish I had that on mine, but I got a
I
porch
wish
in the
we
back
did
of my
too.
house. So you just, I wouldn't need a shed. But who knows? That roll up door either might have fit. I don't know if there's a roll up door on the Charlie side, but something failed on the Charlie side that there's more fire on the Charlie side than there is on the Alpha side. And he's only directing this fire stream through a little burned out hole that's already failed in the roll up door. And the truck company, because that's what they do out there, and they're very good at it, is they vertically ventilate.
Hmm.
In my opinion, the task that should have been done before vertical ventilation, is taking those roll up doors for the engine company to make an effective knock on that garage fire.
Does it look like it was confined to the garage itself, or did it start moving into the rest of the structure?
Fast forward a little bit. There's some lazy smoke coming out of the eaves, but I mean this thing is ripping out of the left side of the garage, absolutely ripping.
I've had a string of garage fires, and I know we talked. I believe we talked about it on one of these episodes a while back. Um, how do you attack a garage fire? Known to be in the garage, maybe it's starting to work its way into the rest of the structure for an attached garage. And I still have seen, personally, I've seen the best outcomes be get in through the door, work your way through the house, and try and attack it from there to start. At that point, then another company's at the simultaneously is starting to open up that door, but getting that attack from the inside versus trying to wait and you're just trying to drive at the garage door until you get it open. Now you're spraying. I think there's making room for more growth on the opposing side of that fire.
Yeah, and the garage fires are one of those arguments that guys always have is, do you attack it through the garage door or do you go through the front door? I always say it's, know what you're doing. If you go strict right to the garage, know what is going to happen if you don't get inside. And if you go inside, just like this fireman in this video was only could put that fire stream through the burned out area, maybe I don't know, it looked like maybe a 3 foot wide by 5 feet tall burned out area. That's all he had to direct his hose stream. It's the same thing with the man door leading from the house to the garage. You have now the width of a man door, which is 30 inches or 36, depending on the size of the door you bought, by 7 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And if that garage is ripping, you really can't push in there, but you don't have the full. You can't hit every surface of the garage from that man door. So it needs to be a multi-directional attack. You need to flank it from the garage doors, and you need the hose line that's inside protecting the hallway and possibly just keeping that door shut.
Yeah. I think one of the best ones is if you have, I know there's a few houses out there in our district, but where the garage door itself, so the roll-up door, is extended just forward of the house itself, and it's still an exterior door, but it's a man door that goes directly into so on the house side of the garage, it goes right inside the garage from the outside, not through the house. Like those,
Yeah, yep.
okay, that's easy to force, and now you can make entry into that as well. Other options are usually on the side. You'll see a man door on the side of the garage, the not house side. Well, another option as well.
So I'm just reading. So if anybody wants to see it, it's on Scene TV on their YouTube channel. It was uploaded on February 28th of 2025, so this year. Fire that started in attached garage spread to the parts of the home, including the attic. The entire home was smoke damaged. The bulk of the fire was kept near the garage. Neighbors could be seen using a garden hose to help the incident. There are no injuries to report. The cause is unknown at this time. So, On Scene TV, it's a good YouTube channel if you guys want to get some good footage to train with and take a look at some fires. It's mostly West Coast stuff, but fires are fires, and you can always learn from them.
Yeah, and use them as training tools too. We're not saying use everything is coming from YouTube, but sometimes take a look at these things and quiz your own crews on. All right, you're pulling up. This is what you see. Give them a 5-second clip and then hit pause, and then run through your scenario from there. Don't use all of the things that the poster did that may not be the right answer. It could be. See if they come up with the same answer, or if they come up with something completely different. It's a good learning and educational tool.
Yeah,
but it's not the only one.
No, I mean, we joke that there's, we have the YouTube firemen. We'll use them on days we'll go to YouTube on days it's just too damn cold to do anything, or, on a Sunday that we just, we've banged on the door enough in the past month where it's like, all right, we need to, let's do something else. So pull up YouTube, just discuss what's going on. Sometimes we'll pull out some of our favorite clips and have a laugh at them. Everybody knows who they are.
Tank the Pump.
Yeah. Legend. Give me a brick.
Give me another. But going into the rest of the Fireground tactics, basic Fireground tactics and everything. kind of another thing it pointed out. We're talking back to the RECEO VS thing. So the last three are overhaul, ventilation, and salvage, and those are obviously we know where ventilation plays. If you got a really large presence on the Fireground, you can do these things simultaneously. So long as you have good communication with either the boss that's in command, so if that's a operations boss or if that's an incident commander, or the direct crew that you're working with inside, saying, "Hey, is this you guys ready?" They may say, "Hey, hold off on that. We're working some kinks out, literally kinks in the line, or we lost water or something. You don't want to vent too early." But those can happen simultaneous. It doesn't mean, okay, I did overhaul, now I ventilate. No, 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 no. You don't have to keep it in that thing. You should consider this flow, but you can move these things around. Salvage is always thrown at the end of all the acronyms for some reason, and Fireground wise, just from experience, you should be kind of keeping an eye on that throughout the entire progress. Obviously, if you're all jazzed up, you're the first in on the line, you're even the nozzlemen themselves, and you're going in, you're kind of you're stuck in that position. That is your thing, and you are loving life on that. It's as Sean had mentioned on the other podcast, that's probably one of the best positions on the Fireground. But you get into a room and half of it's on fire and there's stuff that's still untouched when you open that line. And that same one with the ladder thing. So there was a bunch of camera equipment in this room that we are going to start pulling, sealing, and dumping water into. And it was a matter of just snagging a plastic bin right there and just scooping everything up. Expensive camera equipment, scooping it all up, bring it outside real quick. Okay, guys, hit it.
Yeah.
Take 2 seconds. Throw some tarps down if you can, or call for another. Hey, we got a lot of stuff down here. They need some tarps. Chief, can you send someone down here? Maybe they can detail over a crew. But these are things that kind of make a difference too along the way at the same time. So they don't have to be sequential. They can happen simultaneously.
One of the simplest ways to start salvage, especially as a second due truck company, you go up in this talking like 2-story floors, or even the first due truck company on a ranch, is when you are conducting your primary searches, is shutting the doors.
Yeah, 100%.
You shut the doors. You keep the smoke. You keep the products of combustion out of the bedrooms, and instead of soot stained everything, I mean, you're gonna get some smoke into to make entry into those doors. Hopefully, the doors were shut. If it's at nighttime, they listen to the what is the saying? Close the doors was the close the doors one that we put up on our boards.
Oh, I don't know. I don't pay attention.
Yeah, close your
My bad.
doors before you go to sleep. It's all I know. But hopefully the doors are closed. So if we have once we make entry into those bedrooms, we open up doors and we shut the doors behind us. That allows us to do what it's almost like a reverse VES.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't need to vent the windows, but maybe the room's charged with it. Even if, let's say, the bedroom is open, you go into that bedroom, shut the door, vent the window, and then your conditions are going to get better. And you've protected the flow path with the door. And then when
Yes.
you're done searching that room, you go out and shut the door behind you again to protect that room.
Yeah. So from a search perspective, if you're on that crew and you're doing a primary search on any floor, you're looking for life and fire. We've stated that a million times. We've stated in the academy, we bang it into everybody's heads. Life and fire is what you're searching for. You get to a floor that, let's say it's mild visibility. Okay. But even if it's fully, right? And you get in there, you got to look for that fire and then search your way away. You want to try and find that fire. But as you're progressing through, you're kind of making a fast-paced effort to get down the hallway and look for that one room. As you're passing rooms, just snap those doors closed, find it. If you get to the end and there's no fire, okay, that's fine. You've slowed the conditions down going into each one of those rooms. That means it's not the fire floor. All right, if you can't find any fire, or it's just in a smaller space, but at least you kept it from bubbling out into the rest of that room or rest of that hallway and leading into the other rooms and through that other floors, whether that's through auto exposure or ripping down a hallway. Then go back and start clearing all those rooms and then get out. Some people will argue, well, we use the closed doors as a marker saying this room's closed. So as they work their way down, when they close the door, it means it's already been searched. All right, that may be valid for some scenarios, I suppose, but I know from my experience, I'm going to try to close everything up because it's not closed up first, and then start working undoing things so that I
Did,
don't push something in the wrong way. Doesn't mean it's going to work for every single scenario, but it's going to help me along the way. Because what if that first room has a victim? As you're closing that door, you peek in and you see a victim, right? That's going to change everything.
right.
Doesn't mean you do the Matt Humnicky rule and, well, I'm going to close the door anyway and still go for the fire. No, you got a known victim, right?
Yeah,
That suddenly takes some
the other
priority.
problem is that our department is so young. The age that when I say age gap, I mean the experience gap is pretty wide. To where the person I have riding in the cam position with me might have 6 months to, or actually they just got off of probation, so they probably have just a year on.
Mm-hmm.
I could have someone with just a year on, and depending on how the overtime works out, I could have from 1 year to 8 years on in that cam position. And depending on that individual, I have to know the comfort level that they have and the comfort level that I have. So I am a fan of performing the search that we just talked about, getting into a bedroom and shutting the door behind us. But that means
Yes.
I'm leaving the firemen alone, and they're leaving me alone, and I'm going to go search a different bedroom. But if I have essentially a probationary fireman or a brand new fireman, they're still probies, with 1 year on the job, he's not going to be comfortable on his first, second, maybe even third fire, me leaving him to search a room by himself. They,
Maybe not. Yeah.
they might.
So that's kind of particular. So I'm guessing the scenario that you just had playing out in your head. This is a residential. It's a very small home. We're working down a hallway. It's you and one other person, and you decide, hey, I'll take all the doors on the left. You take all the doors on the right, type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So you're
And let's,
splitting. Like, it doesn't make sense to dump everybody into a 8x10 room. That's ridiculous. Too many people in one small space.
well, that's the average bedroom size in our district is 10 by 10, 10 by 12.
Yeah, very small.
And I always, this is the scenario I always use. I walk into my son's bedroom. If I walk into the door, directly to the right is a Rubbermaid bin full of Legos. After that is our old coffee table that my wife and I used to have in our old house that he uses as his Lego table. After that is a nightstand, and then it's the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a window, and then about 3 feet there is a bunk bed, and it's one of those doubles on the bottom, twin on the top
Yep.
bunk beds. So, bunk bed, and then there's probably maybe 36 inches. I wouldn't even say 36 inches, maybe 30 inches wide from the end of the bunk bed to the wall, and then it's closet. You
So how
put two.
big's that room really?
You're right. It's a 10
You
by
know.
12 room because I measured it for carpet. If you put two firemen in that room, you're going to be bouncing all over each other, and there is not going to be a search being conducted. There's no reason to put two people in that room. I went to a conference years ago. I just wanted to do the hands-on classes. I knew two of the instructors that did the outside truck function classes, phenomenal instructors. One's from this area. One is from the FDNY. Phenomenal, all outside, force entry, cutting roofs, doing windows, breaking window bars and stuff like that. We get to the inside truck company, and there was a live fire evolution to doing the inside truck company, and this fireman that I know that had he was still fireman in a small job in New York, got in an argument with me about sending one guy in to search a room. And I looked at him and I said, your department has 2 major colleges in your town, in your city. He goes, yep. I said, so when you search a dormitory, are you putting 2 firemen in that dorm? Oh, yeah, all the time. I said, bullshit. I said, I went to college and I know how state schools build dorms, and even private schools had probably the same size dorm for freshmen. A dormitory is a 10 by 12 dormitory, and they usually have 2 twin beds, 2 desks, 2 dressers, and probably the kids are bringing a refrigerator in there and maybe a fucking TV or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in college, I could put my hands out and probably swipe both beds with my hands if I walked down the middle. Maybe I had to lean back and forth a little bit. There was no point of putting 2 firemen in a dorm room. Same thing with our bedrooms. But if you think about a residential structure, a 4-bedroom house in a 2-story house, how many rooms are in the second floor?
Uh, I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
A
I was still thinking
4-bedroom.
about the dorms.
I'm jumping back to the residential. You go to a 4-bedroom colonial, 2-story colonial, 4 bedrooms. How many rooms are on the second floor?
Probably all 4 of those bedrooms and a bathroom.
So 5 rooms. And
Yeah,
you might have an ensuite master bath.
maybe.
So we'll say 5.5 rooms. You mean if we go back to that probie or 1-year guy that hasn't had a fire yet, or maybe he's had 1 fire and he's still not at that comfortable level of being, still needs the supervision. You can still leapfrog those rooms and get them done pretty quick. Now, can you get them done a lot quicker if I had a 5, 6, 7-year guy doing a primary search of me? You take right, I take left.
Yeah.
It's going to get done quicker.
Yeah.
Now, what I would like to know, this just popped in my head, and I would have to go on like Zillow or any of those other real estate websites and see floor plans of houses. On a 2-story house, a 2-story colonial that has a ensuite master bath, I would bet that the master bath is always
Sure.
on the opposite side of the main bathroom.
You mean like it's an adjoined wall
No,
or opposite ends of the house?
not opposite. So, take for instance my house.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk down the hall, if you go up to the top of the stairs, directly to the left is 1 bedroom. Directly to the right is another bedroom. Once you leave those bedrooms, you go down the hallway. It's a bathroom to the right. There's nothing to the left. You keep going down the hallway. There's a bedroom to the right. And then there's the master to the left with the ensuite master bath. So they are
Okay.
opposite. They're on. You could draw a line down the center. If you
Mm-hmm.
looked at the roof, the plumbing stacks are in line with the street. They're perpendicular to the street, front to back.
Right. So so there's a bathroom on the front side of the house and a bathroom on the back side, though.
Yeah, that's probably the easier way to explain it.
No, that made sense. So I've seen a lot of them just for plumbing reasons. It's easy to common tee off of like one water source. So what you'll have is like the the main hallway bathroom will butt up. There will be a common wall that
To
shares
the
with the master
master.
bath, right? Even though you got to go through the bedroom and wrap around, but that
So
way
I'm
the plumbing stacks only got to go up to one.
So I'm thinking of my sister-in-law's house that has a ensuite master bath, and the master bath is in the front of the house, almost over. It's at the corner. It would be the Alpha Delta corner, but the garage, it's a detached garage with no great room above it, just loft space. So if you can imagine the house with the garage next to it, it's on the Alpha Delta corner, second floor. And then the kids' bathroom would be almost dead center of the Charlie side of the house.
I see.
So it's on angles.
Hmm. It
So you have
might be because of the.
one here and one up here. And if you look at, you can't see the camera,
No,
but
I
I'm
can I
pointing it.
see.
No, you Matt can, but anybody listening, I'm pointing at the corner of the boxes to where they are.
The so now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of colonials on a street that's kind of sort of behind you, and they have a master bedroom on the second floor, and there's a regular bathroom on the second floor, and the wall is split right between the two bathrooms, so that all the plumbing just has to get shot up, and then it tees off, splits to one and
Yeah.
one, type of thing. So I think that might have been why I was thinking that. Trying to think if there's any other oddball. That's all I can think of is like colonials. Usually they share that plumbing system,
Like,
so they're near each other.
what I was hoping for, like you said, I would have to look at Zillow and get like a floor plan of basic colonials that are out there. But if someone were to take the left side, they're going to get one regular bedroom, the master, the master, which is going to be a bigger bedroom, and the ensuite. So they have almost like 2.5 rooms to search, and the other side of the hallway is going to have 3 rooms to search. So the way
Right.
it would split, you're almost splitting the exact same amount of floor space because the master bedroom is just bigger because it's a master bedroom, but the other side's got to search a full bath compared to just an ensuite bathroom. Now, some of these ensuite bathrooms are massive.
Oh, they're gorgeous. I wish we had the space to do one, but I'd have to do it all from scratch, knock out, essentially absorb a room. But going back to the actual searching, so right now we are mostly searching. It's a 2-person unit that's going and doing that search. So it's kind of like a boss and one person doing it. And now the argument comes that as you're moving down, do you each take a side or leapfrog each other, or do you always say boss in the door and somebody searching the room so that they have a landmark and come back out? What's your take? I know the usual thing is it depends on the size of the house, but what's your take on doing that division versus you're working together?
Well, like I said, it to me it depends on the comfortability of who I have searching with me. If I have the probie 1 maybe 2 year guy and they don't have the experience, or I feel that they don't have the experience, I'm going to keep an eye on them a little bit more. Um, I was reading something about the tick guided search slows people down. I would like to
How
know where.
so?
I don't know. I would like to know where they get their information from. The person that said it's a very opinionated. He's very smart, but he's very strong opinionated on what he says, and it's usually he's got a lot of good suggestions. Um, but I'd like to see, is this just an opinion or is this proven with numbers and fires that they went to? A lot of times, just even during training, if we're training and we're told to do an orientated search, I just keep track of the guy with the tick, and if they miss something, I'll be like, "Hey, did you see that?" And it's usually like, "Yeah, I got that." Or even a couple fires we had where we're with a tick, and my guy's searching. I'm like, "Hey, bro, did you get that? Did you get that bed over there? Did you see those blankets?" Yeah, it's all set. I said, "Oh, okay, just double checking." It's trust but verify, and
Hmm.
type of. It's just a tool. Um, Now, if I have a guy that's got 5, 6, 7 years on, and he's in the cam position that day on overtime, and I know he's been to a couple fires, and he's a good fireman. If I feel it's a time that you take left, I take right, and we'll meet at the end of the hallway, or when you get done with your right hand rooms, wait for me, or if I get done with my left hand rooms before you're done, I'll wait for you, and then we'll divvy back. I'm not a big fan of waste a primary search. One guy does it. The secondary search is where, God forbid, we miss something. The secondary search finds it. But when we train for searches, we always say we're looking for babies. If you're looking for babies, you'll find the adult. But if you're not looking for babies and you find an adult, you might not think to look for the baby.
True. And they're a lot squishier. They're smaller, compact.
Yeah, I mean, one drill I did when I was the training officer, I went and got like day old loaves of bread from the grocery store.
Okay, I didn't know who that was. I was going to
That
say
was me.
the bread
Yeah,
loaves.
day old loaves. It was a day old Italian loaves of bread, and I put them in a swaddle that I took from one of my kids' rooms at the time. That they're out of.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a hospital blanket. I swaddled a loaf of bread up and taped it so the swaddle stay secure. And I put the loaf of bread in a crib. And I will never forget this. And I'm watching the drill getting conducted. And was it in the crib? Might have been in the bed with another kid-sized dummy, like a bigger than a toddler. What do they call? What do they call that age? I should know.
Just
That's what my kids are.
Infant to toddler.
No, it was like a elementary school size kid mannequin that we had.
Yeah, just a kid.
So we had a baby and a kid, and they find the kid, and then he was a boss at the time. He swipes his hand. He finds the loaf of bread, and it's swaddled in a hospital blanket, and he feels it, and he's looking confused. And I was like, hey, "What do you got?" He goes, "It's a loaf of bread," and then he just throws it over his shoulder. I said, "Hey, bro, what? Who wraps a loaf of bread in a hospital blanket?" Oh, I go, these babies, these infants are like, they're wrapped up like burritos. It's the whole point of the swaddling. They make these swaddles now that you can stretch it and wrap it and Velcro it where they can't get out. Now they get to a point where they become little Houdinis and they can get the one arm out and then they get the other arm out. But I remember some of the swaddles that we bought when our kids were babies. They wanted to be wrapped in nice and tight, and they were the consistency. When they're infants, like brand new newborns, they were the size of a good size of Italian loaf of bread, and they had the consistency of a day-old loaf of bread. Squishy, they couldn't move. They rolled around, and so that was the best idea I had, was use the loaf of bread. And but he never had it in his mindset, because we never had a baby, a newborn mannequin, and even if they make a newborn mannequin, they don't have the same shape and feel. They don't have the big head. They don't have the soft, malleable bones and the other bendable joints and shit like that. I mean, even if you were to purchase a doll at the toy store and swaddle them up, they still don't feel like a newborn. Even like the hard plastic ones. You get a plush toy that might be a little bit better. But the point is that this particular fireman never had in his mindset to search for infants.
It's a loaf of bread.
Yeah, and then when he got it, he's like, "It's just a loaf of bread." I said, "Who puts a loaf of bread in a blanket and puts it in the bed?"
I don't know. In our area?
Yeah, that's a good point. But if you ever want a good drill out there, go to the grocery store or go to the local bakery, ask them for like a date, their stale loaves of bread, put it in a hospital blanket, swaddle them up, secure the blanket so the bread doesn't fall out. But a good size loaf of Italian bread is about the size of a newborn baby. It might not weigh the same. A newborn weighs 8 to 10 pounds, but the feeling of it in your gloves is going to be the same.
It's a pretty good tool. What else we got? So we talked RECEO VS, and that's just kind of overview of Fireground tactics. Very, very general. These are the things that we have to consider. Some can play at the same time. But ultimately, I think that the big one that needs that pointer is always going to be rescue. Plan for rescue first as you're pulling up, and as things develop, then mosey on out. And that doesn't mean, hey, we're not going to charge a line in loop, right? I mean, you still need a line, but giving that victim time. If they're presenting, they're going to be priority one, right? So that's if they're hanging from a window or you can see them visibly and they're stuck, and you're the first arriving crew. That's going to be your task. Unless you have somebody right up your butt, it's the next another unit, right? Then okay, now we can deviate from that just a slight bit. Controlling exposures, but the big thing is confinement. So I don't like that they put the exposures that close. That's kind of talking like, hey, this house is blowing. We got no chance of survival in there. What's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to keep the houses left and right or front to back, whatever the exposure issues are, and then we're going to go into confinement. But generally speaking, we want to rescue victims and then find fire and or at the same time. We're not going to skirt rescue just for fire. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's got to be an extreme condition where we override those things where, no, I'm just going to attack this fire. No, hang on, I'll get her later. I'll get that person later. I'll get that family later. It's like, wait, let's get them out. We got to find a way to suit those things.
a lot of these, a lot of our senior assisted living facilities, they have the shelter in place things.
Mm-hmm.
So by us, we wouldn't really, unless their apartment was on fire, or maybe the apartment below them was on fire in one of the 2-story assisted living facilities that we have. By us just sheltering them in their place is quote unquote rescuing them. I mean, we can deal with them after a second, but the way the assisted living is built with the sprinklers and their fire doors, by us extinguishing the fire quickly and efficiently is going to have a better outcome than us trying to pull them through the common hallway or trying to get them rescued via ladders. Us, they're in assisted living for a reason. The last thing we need to do is try to pull them and bring them down a 24-foot extension ladder. So if we can keep them in their apartments, keep their doors shut, that's going to be the biggest thing in the assisted living is you're going to have the looky-loos. You're going to have Ethel.
Everybody's peeking out. Yeah, peeking out in the hallway.
Yeah, you're going to have Mrs. Smith open up the door. She's going to hear the fire alarm going off, and she's going to open up the door. Oh, what's going on? It's get back in your apartment, type of thing. But assisted living, that might be a whole other
That's
podcast.
Actually a really good, really good topic conversation. We got a lot to talk about that and pull up some policies we've developed and how we've developed them, or I should say guidelines rather, but why we've developed them, because we did one thing and then we started meandering towards another just out of repetition, was showing and proving that, hey, we have to change something here. And that evolution has been really, really cool. And from a training standpoint, we haven't done a lot recently, hands-on training. And we used to do that a lot. Now that we got a new wave of people in these last 2-3 years, it'd be good to do almost a full-size drill on those buildings.
Right. And we have a full-out and assisted living facility with a memory care unit. And then we also have senior apartments that is probably should be assisted living, but it is not assisted living, where the maintenance guys there, at least at one of them, is almost like a pseudo assisted, he's just a maintenance guy, but he takes care of all the old people there. He helps them with whatever they need. And then we have the high rises, which is just a whole
different ball of wax.
Different
construction too.
Different construction, different type of people, and it's
and the two towers, they're different from each other as well.
Yeah. Where we was just talking about this with our mutual aid apartment, where the 13-story one has windows only on the Alpha and Charlie sides. The stairwells are on the north and south end of the building, no windows. Where the 8-story one has apartments on all 4 sides, and the stairwells are on the east and west, but they're not on the ends. They're on the Alpha and Charlie sides, just on the corners. But there's still apartments on
Yeah, isn't that bizarre?
The stairwells are flanked on each side by apartments.
Yeah.
They're not at the end of the hallways.
And the
They're at the
floors, as you're going up the stairwells, the half floors and
right.
where every stop is, the plumbing and everything.
Yeah, it's just an
So,
odd layout. But the one thing, the way they are built, is they are. I refer to them as like almost like Lego block apartments.
yeah, yeah.
Each apartment is almost like the old school before the new burn building companies came out, where the old burn buildings used to be masonry block, cinder block, and that's what this is. But each apartment is block walls. There's not drywall between the apartments, so it's like this 13-story building is like 13 stories of cinder block. There's
Yeah.
there's like drywall on the cinder block, but between the apartments, it's all block. But it's kind of a little rant podcast we did tonight. I don't know if you got anything else to talk about.
No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a culmination of a few things. So the biggest thing was training scars, or it's almost not a scar so much as we forgot something, a step to keep integrating, a very, very basic function to keep integrating into our training. And we do a lot of searching. Lately we've been doing a lot of search drills, just because weather, trying to keep it fresh, but we added in that forcible entry portion of it, and not every station or every department has a forcible entry door to practice on or something to force entry on. Although they could make the argument that at the front door of their building, you could,
Right.
but because that was a little bit lacking, that fell to the back burner so far back that it started to appear here as that's what held up the whole drill, and it's not it's not a bad thing for these two people that were going through it. We're just using that as a training tool that, hey, we got to identify that we have to add this into our training. If we're going to choose to add that prop, we got to do it more often than not. Ladders, that's another thing. We kind of, I don't want to say we're fair weather firemen only, but we kind of tend to only throw ladders in the better weather, not in the 3 foot of snow. I don't know if you've ever thrown ladders in 3 foot of snow. I've done it in a snowstorm. That sucked. But getting those placements and getting everything up correctly is imperative. It's imperative to the outcome of that operation.
It was a fire at mutual aid to the apartments next to the Union Street firehouse.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's when Justin turtled himself.
Forgot about all those. That's the one. Oh, that's the night your senior guy took off and he was bopping out there. I remember we went for a mutual aid call and waved to him. Oh, this was maybe 2 years ago.
No. This fire was not.
No, it wasn't that fire.
Oh,
it was that building. That same building. Because we're like, you took the day off to go, go tool around town.
Yeah.
Gotta let them know.
Yep. So.
No, that's all I got.
All right.
How's that Instagram going?
It's going good. It's up there.
It's up there, getting a lot of hits.
It's up there, getting hits, growing a little bit.
Anything interesting come over from the messaging?
Nothing. Couple back and forth with Mike May about some live burn stuff, but nothing really asking questions about anything from the podcast, which it is what it is.
It's all about the instant gratification these days. People want answers, or they want to talk about something. They want live feedback. They want it now, and that's okay too. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast is fun to do. The Instagram is work. It's just like, I got to get something up. I really don't want to deal with it. And then I got to write something up. I hope I don't offend anybody, which right now it's like, whatever.
Right.
It is what it is.
So if anybody's got any questions or comments, concerns, wants to bring something up, maybe it's a bashful thing, a timid. You don't want to say who you are, want your department put out there, anything like that, but you do have a question that you want to ask and have it brought out, just direct message, send the DM, or the email at firefrom2windows@gmail.com, all spelled out. We'll try our best to get those answers for you, at least find some resources at your disposal. Would love to discuss more things if you guys are bringing it our way. This is community driven, as we've said in the past. We don't come up with every topic on our own, although most of them we do. But we've had a few that pop up. Somebody asks a question, and it just leads us on this path. But yeah, reach out.
Yeah, you told the Gmail. We got the Instagram. That's about it.
That's it. All right. Well, with that, everybody stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. See you guys.